What if I told you some of the most haunting, daring, and influential classic movies ever made just quietly landed on Tubi for free? No warning, no headlines, just sitting there, waiting for the curious and the fast. Halfway through this list, you'll realize these films don't feel old at all. They feel risky. And by the end, one title might completely change how you see early cinema. Let's get into it before it disappears again. Number 17, The Big Combo, 1955. This movie doesn't open politely. It opens like a punch of shadow and sound, daring you to keep up. The Big Combo arrived near the end of the classic noir era, when studios were tired, budgets were shrinking, and filmmakers started pushing atmosphere harder than Polish. And you can feel that pressure in every frame. Faces half-lit, rooms swallowed by darkness, conversations that feel like chess games played in whispers. What makes this film special isn't the story alone, though it's tight and relentless. It's the mood. The Big Combo feels like a world collapsing in slow motion, where every character seems trapped by choices already made. Director Joseph H. Lewis leaned into deep contrast lighting so extreme it almost looks modern. This wasn't accidental. It was a stylistic gamble, and it worked. At the time, critics were divided. Some thought it was too grim. Others thought it went too far visually. Decades later, filmmakers study it like a blueprint. You can see echoes of it in later crime dramas that rely more on tension than action. Watching it now on a free platform feels unreal. This is one of those films people used to hunt down on expensive discs or late-night broadcasts. Now it's just there, quietly waiting. And if you care about mood, shadows, and stories that don't hold your hand, this one demands your attention. Number 16, Suddenly, 1954. Suddenly is one of those films that feels almost too bold for its time. Not flashy, not loud, just unsettling in how calm it stays while tension keeps tightening. The story unfolds in a small town that looks peaceful on the surface, the kind of place where nothing big is supposed to happen. That's exactly why the movie works. The contrast between quiet streets and rising danger creates an uneasy rhythm that never lets you relax. What makes Suddenly stand out is how personal everything feels. This isn't about large-scale chaos or spectacle. It's about ordinary spaces turning unfamiliar. Living rooms, windows, backyards, places that should feel safe, suddenly feeling watched. The film also carries a strange historical weight. It came out during a time when audiences were deeply aware of fear, but rarely talked about it openly. That tension bleeds into the movie. The characters speak calmly, but you can feel the anxiety under every word. For years, this title floated in and out of circulation, sometimes hard to find, sometimes ignored entirely. That's why seeing it appear for free feels almost suspicious, like you weren't supposed to notice. It's lean, direct, and quietly intense. Suddenly isn't trying to impress you. It's trying to sit with you, and once it does, it doesn't leave easily. Number 15, Beat the Devil, 1953. This one is different, and that's exactly why it belongs here. Beat the Devil is playful, chaotic, and deliberately strange. It's a movie that feels like it's winking at you the entire time, daring you to keep up with its rhythm. Made by people who clearly knew the rules of classic storytelling and decided to bend them just for fun. Humphrey Bogart stars in a role that feels almost self-aware. He's charming, yes, but also slightly off balance, like he knows he's inside a movie that refuses to behave. The dialogue crackles with sarcasm. The situations feel unpredictable. You're never quite sure where the story is heading, and that's the point. At release, audiences didn't know what to do with it. Some expected a straight adventure. Others expected something serious. What they got was something slippery and ironic, long before that tone became common. Over time, Beat the Devil earned cult status. Writers and filmmakers later praised it for breaking form without breaking momentum. It's the kind of film that feels ahead of its time, even though it's firmly rooted in the early 50s. Seeing it free today feels like stumbling into a private joke shared across generations. It's clever without being smug, loose without being careless, and it proves that classic cinema wasn't always stiff or serious. Sometimes, it just liked to mess with you. Number 14, DOA, 1950. This movie starts with an idea so strong it still gets reused today. A man walks into a police station and calmly explains that he doesn't have much time left. Then the story rewinds to show you how he got there. That's it. That's the hook. And it works instantly. DOA is fast, sharp, and restless. It moves through city streets, offices, bars, and hallways with a sense of urgency that never fades. The pacing feels modern. The dialogue snaps. There's no wasted motion. What makes this film endure is how it blends mystery with inevitability. You already know where it's going. The tension comes from watching the clock tick anyway. Every conversation matters. Every delay feels dangerous. When it was released, audiences were struck by how bold the structure felt. This wasn't a safe story. It didn't offer comfort. It asked viewers to sit with uncertainty and keep watching anyway. Over the years, DOA became a favorite among film students and genre fans, but casual viewers often missed it. That's why its sudden availability feels like a gift. This is a masterclass in lean storytelling. If you like mysteries that respect your intelligence and don't slow down to explain themselves, this one still hits hard. Number 13, The Most Dangerous Game, 1932. This is where things get truly surprising. The Most Dangerous Game is over 90 years old, yet it still feels daring, tense, and strangely modern. The setup is simple: a remote location, a refined host, guests who slowly realize they may not be guests at all. What makes this film remarkable is how much it suggests without showing too much. The atmosphere does the work: fog, shadows, silence, long pauses that let your imagination run ahead of the story. It was made using leftover sets from another production, which forced the filmmakers to rely on creativity instead of scale. That limitation turned into its greatest strength. The movie feels intimate and claustrophobic, like there's nowhere to hide. At the time, audiences weren't used to stories this bold. It pushed boundaries quietly, through implication and tension rather than spectacle. Over the decades, its influence spread everywhere. Countless stories borrowed its core idea, often without realizing where it came from. Finding this film free today feels almost unreal. It's not just a relic, it's a foundation. Watching it now is like tracing the roots of an entire genre back to a single, confident step. And we're only getting started. Number 12, Night of the Living Dead, 1968. This movie didn't arrive politely. It showed up and changed everything. Night of the Living Dead looks simple at first glance, but its impact is massive. Shot on a tight budget with unknown faces, it felt raw and immediate in a way audiences had never seen before. There was no glossy finish, no safety net, just tension that kept building. What really set this film apart was its tone. It refused to comfort you. Characters argued, plans failed, authority figures were questioned. For viewers in the late 60s, that felt unsettling because it mirrored the real world more than people expected from entertainment. The setting is almost minimal: a single house, open fields, darkness pressing in from every direction. That limitation worked in the film's favor. It made every sound matter, every pause feel heavy. Over time, this movie became one of the most studied and referenced films in cinema history, not because of spectacle, but because of how honestly it portrayed fear and confusion. It trusted the audience to keep up. Seeing it available for free feels strange considering how influential it is. This is the kind of movie that usually gets locked behind premium collections. Watching it now, you can still feel its power. It doesn't feel old. It feels sharp, and it reminds you how much can be done with very little when the idea is strong. Number 11, Scarlet Street, 1945. Scarlet Street is quiet in the way that makes you uneasy. It's not loud. It doesn't rush. Instead, it slowly pulls you into the life of a man who thinks he understands his place in the world, only to discover how fragile that belief really is. Edward G. Robinson delivers one of his most layered performances here. He plays someone ordinary, almost invisible, which makes his emotional unraveling feel deeply personal. The story moves through cramped apartments and city streets that feel cold and indifferent. What makes Scarlet Street stand out is how bleak it is without being flashy. There are no grand speeches, no heroic turns, just small decisions that lead to consequences no one can undo. At the time of release, this tone shocked audiences. Some critics didn't know how to react to a film that refused to soften its message. Decades later, that refusal is exactly why the movie still works. It feels honest, painfully so. The moral weight lingers long after the final scene. For years, this film bounced in and out of availability, often overshadowed by louder noir titles. Finding it free now feels like rediscovering a lost chapter of classic cinema. It's not comforting, it's not easy, but it's unforgettable. Number 10. White Heat, 1949. Some performances don't fade, they burn in place. White Heat is often remembered for James Cagney's explosive presence, but the film is more than a showcase. It's a sharp study of obsession, control, and a mind slowly coming apart under constant pressure. From the opening moments, the energy feels unstable. Conversations snap. Silence feels loaded. The story moves through crime, loyalty, and identity with the sense that something is always about to break. Nothing ever feels secure. What set White Heat apart in its time was its intensity. This was not a glamorous outlaw story. It was raw and unsettling. Cagney stripped away charm and leaned fully into volatility, creating a performance that shocked audiences. Viewers were captivated and uneasy at the same time. Critics understood they were seeing something different. Over the years, the film became iconic, quoted often but rarely matched in emotional force. Finding it free now is surprising. This is a cornerstone of classic cinema. Watching it today, you can still feel its influence everywhere. White Heat doesn't ask you to admire its characters. It asks you to witness them. And once you do, you don't forget. Number 9. He Walked by Night, 1948. This film feels like a blueprint hiding in plain sight. He Walked by Night focuses on method, procedure, observation. It doesn't glamorize its subject. Instead, it watches patiently, showing how persistence and routine slowly close in. The movie is known for its stark visuals, especially scenes that take place underground. Long shadows stretch across concrete walls. Silence becomes oppressive. The environment itself feels like a character. What's fascinating is how restrained everything is. Dialogue is minimal. Emotions are kept in check. The tension comes from watching systems work, step by step, without shortcuts. At the time, this approach felt unusually serious. It wasn't flashy entertainment. It was almost clinical. That's exactly why it influenced so many later films and shows focused on investigation and realism. For decades, this movie flew under the radar, appreciated mostly by genre enthusiasts. Its sudden availability now feels like an invitation to rediscover where modern procedural storytelling really began. If you like films that respect patience and reward attention, this one quietly delivers. Number 8. The Naked Kiss, 1964. This movie opens with an image so unexpected it immediately demands attention. The Naked Kiss refuses to ease you in. It challenges assumptions from the first scene and never stops pushing. Directed by Samuel Fuller, the film tackles identity, judgment, and reinvention with a boldness that startled audiences in the 60s. The story follows a woman trying to escape her past and build something new, only to discover that appearances mean very little. What makes this film powerful is its refusal to simplify. Characters are complicated, situations feel uncomfortable. The story asks hard questions without offering easy answers. At the time of release, reactions were intense. Some viewers praised its honesty, others were unsettled by its directness. Over time, it became a cult favorite, studied for how fearlessly it confronted social ideas without preaching. Seeing it free today feels almost shocking given how challenging it still feels. This isn't passive viewing, it demands engagement. The Naked Kiss reminds you that classic cinema could be daring, confrontational, and deeply human. And it proves that bold storytelling didn't start recently. It's been waiting in plain sight all along. Number 7. Kansas City Confidential, 1952. This movie moves like a trap slowly closing. Kansas City Confidential opens with a daring idea. A crime carried out by people who never learn each other's names. No trust, no loyalty, just masks, secrecy, and a plan built entirely on suspicion. That single choice instantly separates it from many classic crime stories. What follows is a tense unraveling. One false accusation pushes an ordinary man into a dangerous game where guilt has already been decided. To clear his name, he must step into a shadowy world of backrooms, quiet threats, and conversations where every word feels measured. No one speaks more than they have to. The film's strength lies in its structure. Every scene locks neatly into place. You're often a step ahead of the characters, which sharpens the tension. You sense where things are heading, while they remain trapped in the moment. When the movie was released, it passed without much notice. It wasn't loud or flashy enough for mass appeal. Over time, however, its precision earned respect. Filmmakers recognized its influence on later stories built around secrecy and mistrust. Finding it free today feels like discovering a missing link. Kansas City Confidential is lean, smart, and proof that strong ideas outlast spectacle. Number 6. Too Late for Tears, 1949. Some characters don't wait for fate. They grab it and refuse to let go. Too Late for Tears is powered by one of the most unforgettable performances in classic cinema. The story revolves around a sudden opportunity and what happens when ambition takes over completely. The film wastes no time setting its tone. From the opening moments, you know this story won't soften its edges. Choices are made quickly. Regret comes later, and consequences never feel accidental. What makes this movie remarkable is how direct it is. There's no moral lecture, no reassurance, just a steady march forward driven by desire and control. The dialogue is sharp, the pacing is relentless. Every scene tightens the pressure. When it first appeared, audiences were stunned by how unapologetic it felt. Some critics weren't ready for a story that refused to punish ambition in predictable ways. Over time, that boldness became its legacy. For years, this film was difficult to track down in good quality. Seeing it freely available now feels like a correction of history. Too Late for Tears isn't just entertaining, it's fearless, and it reminds you how daring classic storytelling could be when it trusted its audience. Number 5. Dementia 13, 1963. This is where atmosphere takes over completely. Dementia 13 feels like a dream you're not sure you want to finish. Directed by a young filmmaker still finding his voice, the movie leans heavily into mood, color, and unease rather than clarity. The story unfolds in fragments. You're given pieces, not explanations. Settings feel isolated, conversations feel slightly off. That sense of disorientation is intentional. The film wants you unsettled, not informed. At the time of release, reactions were mixed. Some viewers were confused, others were intrigued. Over the years, Dementia 13 gained recognition as an early example of a style that would later dominate independent cinema. What makes it compelling today is how bold it feels. The visuals are striking, the pacing is unpredictable. It doesn't follow rules, it creates its own. Seeing this movie appear free is surprising considering how often it's discussed as a cult discovery. It's not for everyone, and it doesn't try to be. Dementia 13 is an experience, one that proves early experimentation often comes from taking risks without knowing where they'll lead. Number 4, Gun Crazy, 1950. This movie doesn't just tell a story, it moves like one. Gun Crazy is kinetic in a way that still feels fresh. The camera follows characters closely, pulling you into their decisions as they make them. The story centers on obsession, romance, and momentum. Two people bound by impulse rather than logic. Once they start moving, stopping feels impossible. The pacing reflects that. Scenes roll into each other with urgency. What set this film apart was how it was shot. Long takes, moving cameras, a sense of immediacy rarely seen at the time. These techniques weren't common, but they added energy that changed how crime stories could look. Initially, the film didn't get widespread recognition. It was considered too unconventional. Years later, critics and directors praised it as a breakthrough. Finding Gun Crazy available for free feels almost unreal. This is a film studied for its technique, not just its plot. Watching it now, you can feel how much modern cinema owes to its bold choices. It's fast, it's emotional, and it refuses to slow down. Number 3. The Hitchhiker, 1953. This film strips tension down to its core. The Hitchhiker is relentless in its simplicity. 3 men, a road, and a growing sense that escape may not be possible. Directed by Ida Lupino, one of the few women directing films in that era, the movie focuses on psychology rather than spectacle. The danger comes from proximity, silence, long stares, conversations that feel like tests. What makes the film so effective is how restrained it is. There's no excess. Every scene serves the pressure building between characters. The open road, usually a symbol of freedom, becomes a space of uncertainty. At the time, audiences weren't used to thrillers this minimal. Over the years, it earned respect for its discipline and intensity. Seeing it free today is a reminder that great tension doesn't need volume, it needs focus. The Hitchhiker doesn't shout, it watches, and that makes it unforgettable. Number 2, Carnival of Souls, 1962. This movie feels slightly out of sync with the world around it. Carnival of Souls never rushes. It lets unease grow quietly, scene by scene. The story follows a woman who survives a terrifying accident and then begins to feel disconnected from everything familiar. People respond strangely. Public spaces feel empty. Even silence feels louder than it should. The power of this film comes from how little it uses to achieve so much. The budget was small, the cast mostly unknown, yet the atmosphere carries every moment. Long streets with no one in sight, footsteps echoing where they shouldn't, an abandoned carnival that feels frozen, as if time simply walked away. When it was released, the movie barely registered. It didn't fit popular trends and offered no easy explanations. Years later, filmmakers began recognizing its importance. Its influence spread quietly into movies that focused on mood, isolation, and inner unease. Watching it now, the film still feels fresh. The discomfort doesn't come from sudden moments. It comes from distance, from the fear of being present but unseen. Carnival of Souls waits patiently for the right viewer, and when it finds you, it lingers. Number 1, Detour, 1945. This movie is lean, sharp, and impossible to forget. Detour feels like a late-night confession spoken without excuses. It follows a man whose life collapses because of small choices that slowly tighten around him. There is no single turning point, just one decision leading quietly to the next. What makes Detour so powerful is its honesty. The dialogue is blunt, the pacing is unforgiving. Characters feel trapped not just by circumstances, but by who they are. The film never tells you how to feel. It simply shows events unfolding without mercy. Made with very limited resources, the movie turns restriction into strength. Few locations, minimal music, tight framing that makes every scene feel boxed in. The world feels narrow, like escape was never an option. For years, Detour lived on the margins, praised by filmmakers, but rarely seen by wider audiences. Over time, it became a defining example of pure noir storytelling. Seeing it free now feels almost unreal. Detour doesn't try to impress, it just tells the truth, and that honesty is why it earns the top spot. So there you have it, 17 rare classics hiding in plain sight, waiting for anyone curious enough to press play. Some of these films shaped entire genres. Others rewrote the rules quietly. If even one of them surprised you, let me know which one caught you off guard. Share this list with someone who loves discovering forgotten cinema. Hit subscribe for more deep dives like this, and remember, sometimes the best movies aren't announced, they just appear.